Braxcast time once again. This is the 50th episode of the Braxcast, and we've got a pretty exciting episode because the Great War of Separation is upon us. The pre-order started on Wednesday, and it's been a pretty good success. Over 4,000 books sold and $100,000 in revenue in the first couple of days, and this launched in the middle of the week, and I'm filming this on Saturday. This is a pretty basic collection. We've got 4 unique covers, a t-shirt, a poster, and an art book, which I'll get into in just a moment. This seems to be a pretty good, or the standard format for a collection. The IRA number 2 being very similar. It's a pretty good compromise in offering the fans good showings while maintaining a slim enough choosing for each release, because there's just so much stuff being released, so they can't have a campaign amount or the amount of merchandise associated with the campaigns for everything that they do. That would be too expensive, and of course don't have enough space in the warehouse. But like I said, I did mention there being an art book, and we've got the art of Jack Herbert. Jack Herbert, of course, being the artist for the Great War of Separation, Chuck Dixon being the writer. So Jack Herbert is getting an art book. This is showcasing cover B of Alphacore number 1. He did the art for that. An absolutely fantastic cover showing Lillian Renacci and Ingrid Valdez really going at it. Absolutely love this cover. It's going to be nice to see the art of Jack Herbert. I've reviewed both art of Joe Bennett and art of Will Conrad. Those are the 2 we've gotten shipped to us so far. And of course, Deborah Carita's art book and this art book are forthcoming, and I will be reviewing those when I get them in my hands. So stay tuned for that. Very exciting to see this one, but we're going to go showcase all of the covers here. So this is cover A, done by Kanan White. Kanan White has really settled into being the cover A artist. Of course, he did cover A for item number 1. He did do cover D for item number 2. And cover A, I think somebody else did that. Person is escaping me, but as you can see, Chuck Dixon is writing, Jack Herbert is the artist, and Candace Hands is the colorist. And this is an absolutely exciting story, because this is basically the origin event of the modern timeline of the Rippaverse, because Texas is an independent nation, Flores Park is a city-state, and the United States has been fractured, and the Great War of Separation is going to tell us why that happened and how the United States fractured. But definitely how Texas fractured, and probably by extension we'll know the political status of the U.S. continent in the modern timeline. But if you can see this character here, she's the one that's really stolen the show in terms of interest. Of course, we've got what seems to be, we'll get into that, this man right here, but this character, she's got like a, I believe, Nova from StarCraft, or Ghost, if I'm getting it correct, if I'm getting that correctly. She's that type of character, a blonde elite assassin woman. She's definitely stolen the show. We don't know what her name is yet, and we are going to know that when this book fulfills. So this collection is running until February 28th, and fulfillment should begin on the 3rd of March, which is a Monday, which is typically when they begin fulfillment, because with any warehouse operation, pickups only happen on weekdays. So we are going to go on to cover B. So cover B is the retro cover. Bart Sears is the artist. Marcos Martin colored this one. He also colored cover A. And this is the retro cover. This is becoming a very much a tradition in the Rippaverse to have these really awesome retro covers. Something I think Gold and Silver Age idea. You have this, you have the lettering. Is it an X-Sept or is it a monster? Can it be stopped? Find out inside. Introducing the most dangerous villain yet in Zeno. This is most likely Zeno, the shapeshifter. Kind of reminds me, I believe, Clayface from Batman is the character that I'm thinking of in terms of just having that like creepy melting look. Definitely love to see a retro cover like this, and I definitely love to see a character like this in the Great War of Separation. So absolutely love this cover. Bart Sears did a phenomenal job drawing it. Absolutely love that Rippaverse code of ethics. It really adds to that retro feel, and it really drives home why the Rippaverse is the Rippaverse's ethic. driving everything that they do. So we're going to get into the C cover. So this is the foil and embossed cover. Joe Bennett is the artist. Of course, Joe Bennett being the penciler for Horseman, Alphacore, and Zalen. So I think I've said this before, but I'll reiterate this. Joe Bennett is most likely the most prolific artist in the Rippaverse for interiors, because he's on 2 ongoing series, and he'll have 2 graphic novels, one-shot graphic novels under his belt in Horseman, Welcome to Flores Park, and Zalen, What Kills Must Die by the end of this year. This is the foil and embossed cover. I believe Marcos Jecko, if I'm getting his name correctly, did the colors on this. And this is, of course, a young General Brian Solari, who's got the shaved head. He's got the military gear, and he is really the star of the show in this cover, and it absolutely looks fantastic. Can't wait to get it in my hands. But we're going with cover D right now. This is the mass print cover. This is by Wagner Reese. I believe I think Candace Hahn, the colorist for the interior artwork of this book, is the colorist for this book. This absolutely looks fantastic. Of course, you've got the Texan flag. I believe this is like the Texas Capitol building. You've got a Midwestern home. This is an absolutely beautiful scene. I do think Rippaverse Wiki, that Twitter account, which you definitely should follow, and you should check out the Rippaverse Wiki in the link to the description below, did post the line art for this. Absolutely looks fantastic. This is a fantastic cover. Absolutely love to see this one. And I think his son helped him with the gray toning before that got colored. So definitely an absolutely fantastic piece by all involved. And it definitely is going to be nice to have this be the mass print cover, which is the one that people will be getting in perpetuity, because all the other ones are limited in print. And that's been the format for I think ever since like ISM 2, having 4 covers with cover D being the mass print cover, and I think it's a really good format. So they've really got a good thing going with these 4 covers and having cover D being the mass print cover. So I definitely think they should do that. It's a very happy medium between offering variety and collectability without getting into having like 20 different variant covers, and of course you don't have that scheme that the big players run, where they have the comic book shops buy like 20 of the mass print covers to get 1 of the variant covers. So they just have a limited amount of those covers A to C for the fans to get in during the collection period, and then they sell cover D for everybody who wants to get in afterwards. But we're going to go talk a little bit about the Great War of Separation, because it's mentioned in ISM number 2. So I've got it postmarked right here. So in ISM number 2, of course, this is getting into spoilers for the Rippaverse. Sam Willard, if I'm getting his name correctly, is abducted by these devlings. That's what they're called. And ISM goes to Gooding to try and get help with that. And during this, Gooding says, "We were both very young during the Great War of Separation. How much do you know about the factions? As with any war, there's more to it than we know. I understand the basics. Texas won, and Brian is the hero. Of course, there are some conspiracies. And at least one of them I personally can confirm. Paranormal subjects took advantage of this turmoil and made moves." So very interesting stuff. And of course, ISM and Gooding being young during the Great War of Separation, I believe in the first page of Gooding, the Polymath, Brian Solari is mentioned. So he was very much famous back then. And then he settled into the Alphacore after that war. But of course, there is some art that features a family that looks suspiciously like Jacob Harriet and Avery Silman. But I think to get into that is not going to be just with me. I very fortunately have an interview lined up with Chuck Dixon, and we're going to be getting into everything that he's doing, starting with the Great War of Separation, of course, ending with Alphacore, the first Rippaverse book that he was a writer on. So stay tuned for that. Like, comment, and subscribe, and hopefully you enjoy the interview. Hello, guys. This is Joker the Fool, and I've got the legendary Chuck Dixon with me. So he's the writer for Great War of Separation and a bunch of other stuff in the Rippaverse. So I'll let you introduce yourself, Chuck. You can talk about your career in comics before getting to the Rippaverse and how you got started into the Rippaverse, and then we'll go and start with the Great War of Separation since that just launched this week.
Well, I've been a prolific comic book writer since the 80s. I've worked on tons of iconic legacy characters like Batman, the Punisher, Conan the Barbarian, Moon Knight, The Simpsons, SpongeBob SquarePants, G.I. Joe. I've written thousands of comic strips and just enjoying the opportunity here to help build the Rippaverse.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. And with the Great War of Separation, this is a really foundational event for the Rippaverse. So, uh, I want you to talk about the Great War of Separation and how that links up with Alphacore, since Brian Solari is such a big character in both of those narratives.
Well, basically, the Great War of Separation begins like a generation before the Rippaverse books that you're familiar with now. So we get to see Brian Solari when he was in the army, and basically, a lot of it, not all of it, but a lot of it is his origin story and the origin story of a number of the excepts we've seen. It also explains that there's a difference. There's two different kinds of excepts, which is something that readers aren't aware of. So, I, you know, shorthand, we're filling in the mysteries and the history of the Rippaverse, and going back to how Texas became an independent nation and stuff like that. It's a superhero story, it's an action story, it's a war story, all in one.
Yeah, no, fantastic. So I've got the interior art that was shown off, and when I was doing my solo segment before this interview, I mentioned in Isom 2, Isom mentions that he was young during the Great War of Separation, and I think this is very clearly a very young Isom with his parents, Jacob and Harriet Silman. And one of the things I love about comics in general and the storytelling, you have all the storytelling in the background. You see that TV in the top there. In Horseman, there's a scene where Hector is lying in bed, and you see that old picture from him what during his Army Ranger days. So you've got a really good talent of putting these very subtle nods in the backgrounds of stories, and of course the artists that you work with, Joe Bennett, Jack Herbert, they understand the assignment.
Yeah, I mean, Eric said, "Can you fit young Isom in the story somewhere?" It's like kind of important, and I think he thought I would just do a cameo, but I kind of used the family to show the Silman family to show what the home front was like during the war, and so rather than just a cameo, I sort of fleshed out their scenes, and they carry through the entire miniseries as sort of a background story of how the war affects the average people. And of course, Isom is anything but average, but on the surface, he appears to be just, a kid living in a neighborhood in the suburbs in Texas. And so, that was really important to the story. I felt it brought a lot of heart to the story, and Eric was very, very pleased with the results. So, and they were some of my favorite scenes to write.
Yeah, fantastic. So we're getting into this next scene. So I think this is more like a younger Solari showing this conflict of the war. You've got, the Don't Mess with Texas. You've got the protests. I know this is like the cartels and the feds kind of converging on Texas, and then Texas breaking out and becoming independent. So I guess, speak to that, and then we'll move to the next page, and then
Well, yeah, Brian is torn because he's a Texan by birth, and he supports a lot of the issues that are drawing Texas away from the Union, and he has to make a decision, both moral and career wise, and where do his principles stand, where do his loyalties lie, and that's a big part of his backstory. And at this point in the story, he's not an accept. So there's a hint for you.
yeah, interesting. Yeah, so this is more of a true origin. This is why I'm so excited for the Great War of Separation, because there's so much world building for the Rippaverse that we need that this story is going to tell. But we'll get into this is, of course, at the Pentagon. I imagine this is a very dramatic confrontation where Brian's presenting his moral conflict that he has with Texas's independent. But I'll let you get into that as the writer.
Yeah, this scene is very much analogous to when Abraham Lincoln asked General Lee to lead the Union Army in the invasion of Virginia. And Brian Solari is pretty much in the same position of, am I going to invade my home state? Am I going to, face down, the state where I was raised? And this is the crux point in the story. What decision is he going to make? So, there's a lot of background. There's a lot of stuff going on. I mean, this story is packed. A lot. Part of it's political thriller too. I mean, there's part of it's espionage. There's part sci-fi. It's like everything but the kitchen sink thrown in here, and to make it fast-paced the story, but also inform Rippaverse fans of the history of the characters that they're reading.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love it. And there's just so much with the Rippaverse that you can do with sci-fi, with the mystical stuff, with Bloodroof. And, it seems like all of this is going to converge in Great War Separation. But this is all
Very much so. This is very much a convergence.
Yeah. So I don't think we can get into anything more without the NDA getting on to us. So we're going to move on to the Horseman. Of course, Horseman, Welcome to Forest Park. I reviewed that. Absolutely fantastic work. And now we know that we're getting an ongoing series that, you and Joe are going to be working on. So you've talked about how Horseman came to be part of the Rippaverse. I guess you can reiterate that and your intentions going forward as it being an ongoing series.
Well, it began with Joe and I were working on Alphacore 1, and Joe said, you know what Rippaverse needs? They need like a non-superpowered masked vigilante, like a Batman or like a Punisher, that kind of thing. And I thought, and then the wheels just started turning. And I thought, well, I've done this kind of character a lot, so I don't want to repeat myself. So I wanted to rethink and sort of stand the masked vigilante genre on its head. And I think largely I've done that. That he's not like Frank Castle. He's not like Bruce Wayne in any way. And that was the most important thing to me going forward. And then when you see the first issue of the ongoing Horseman, you'll see we are continuing to turn this genre on its head. We're going to give you everything you want in a vigilante crime thriller, but we're not going to give it to you in the way you expect it.
Yeah, no, I'm a bit of a comic book newbie. I haven't read Punisher really. I think I've read like one Punisher Spider-Man crossover comic from the 90s, so I'm not the most experienced with it. But Hector has a very unique spin to him, and I love his character motivation of why he does what he does. But the very interesting thing, you told a very self-contained story in Welcome to Forest Park, so the ending you gave to Tuna made sense, but Tuna was a great character, a very Kingpin vibe, and I want Tuna to come back. Is there any intention for Tuna making his glorious return and getting revenge on Michael and Lillian?
Well, let me just say that in as this story goes on, and it weaves into the Alphacore series as well, there's sort of a subplot. They're gonna wish Tuna was back too, because who comes along to replace him as the Kingpin of Forest Park is bad news. So yeah, we will see Tuna again in the future. I like him too.
Okay,
so he will be back.
Fantastic. So we're moving into Zalen. So this is the cosmic appearance for the Rippaverse. So you and Joe are working on this. Joe's output for the Rippaverse is absolutely ridiculous. 2 graphic novels, 2 ongoing series, and his artwork is absolutely amazing. So I know you can't say much about Zalen, but what can you say about Zalen, and what do you think that Zalen is going to give to the fans? Not only just on its own, but tying into the larger narrative of the Rippaverse. Like, Dokuman, Yaira, Bloodroof are characters that I think could have a cosmic connection that could be touched on in Zalen. So I'll let you get into that.
Well, I mean, his beginnings are kind of the reverse of the Horseman's. Joe was working on Horseman 2, or Horseman Welcome to Forest Park, and I visited the Rippaverse offices and meeting everybody and seeing their intentions and learning more about the Rippaverse readers from them. I said to Joe, you know what they need? They need a cosmic character. They need like a badass, like a Nexus or a Warlock type character. And of course, Joe was all over it. He sent me samples from an unpublished cosmic thing he had done, and it blew my mind. I didn't even know he'd ever done anything like that. And as the Saskas say, this book is trippy. So it's a little different. but Zalen will play a very, very important central part in events in the past and events ongoing in the Rippaverse. He is when he shows up, it's on.
So is his character set, or do you see this more like an Omni-Man where he sort of has to warm up to humanity through the course of his story, or is that something that you're not allowed to say?
Yeah, he's definitely not human, and yeah, you'll see,
Okay. Yeah.
he's different.
Okay, that's good. So that's all we can get into now, but we're going to talk about Alphacore. This is, of course, what started your working relationship with the Rippaverse. Absolutely loved Alphacore #1. I'm very excited for Alphacore #2. It's probably one of my most anticipated books, especially after Yaira #1. So I guess talking about how everything in the Rippaverse ties back to Alphacore, and with the events of Yaira #1, is that going to tie into Alphacore #2, or is it solely just dealing with the fallout from the events of Alphacore #1? Because there's a lot of fallout with Alphacore #1. Of course, the death of Wilkins, Eagle's Nest, Michael and Lillian being involved in all this stuff. So there's a lot of stuff in Alphacore #1 that needs to be addressed. So my biggest question is that all Alphacore 2 is about, or are we going to see some stuff that happened in Yaira #1 that relates to the Alphacore being addressed in Alphacore #2, especially as it relates to Stefania?
Yeah, I'm kind of building up to Yaira appearing in Alphacore. It's like at DC, we were always wary not to use the Joker too much. You don't want these characters showing up on a regular basis. It always has to be a surprise. It always has to be a holy crap moment. It always has to be at some sort of nexus of some big event. So Alphacore 2 is largely going to deal with the aftermath of Alphacore 1 because horrible things happen. And there's a lot to deal with. And it also, a lot of the events of Alphacore 2 relate to Horseman #1. So there's things set up in Horseman #1 that Alphacore will deal with as a subplot, and then those will continue in the next issue of Horseman. This isn't a thing where you have to buy every issue. I'm not saying, hey, you have to buy everything to know the story, but there are elements. And Rippaverse fans are loyal fans. I mean, they're going to buy them all anyway. But I'm just saying, um, I'm connecting these stories just so it feels more organic, and there's more there, and there's more subtext and resonance. But each of these stories can be read independently. But
Yeah.
but it's just part of a bigger picture
Yeah, fantastic. So with when you say Horseman #1, do you mean of the ongoing or Welcome to Flores Park?
of the ongoing.
Okay, yeah, no, that's going to be really interesting. So I guess Horseman is this character. He's going to be a big presence for the X-Ups going forward, because especially with his appearance or Alpha Core's appearance in Horseman Welcome to Flores Park, there's definitely going to be this conflict. And of course, there's going to have to be some big thing that drives Hector into vigilantism when he knows he's got Brian Solari and Braxwell breathing down his back. He doesn't want to wrong them too much, and he's got this desire to be the straight man for his family. So there's going to have to be something big, and I'm going to be excited to see that being touched on from his perspective and the perspective of the Alpha Core, which it sounds like you're trying to do with these two series, which is really interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to have to change his tactics now that Alpha Core is aware of him. He can't be as out in the open, but things are going to happen in Alpha Core 2. The readers are going to love it. They are going to love the last page of the book. It's one of those scenes. Every once in a while, I think of a scene that I can't wait to get to, and that was one. I couldn't wait to get to that scene at the very end of Alpha Core 2.
Yeah, no, fantastic. So, I guess, we got through this quicker than I thought we would. But I want to ask you some general questions about the Rippaverse. So, how has your experience been working for the Rippaverse, especially in comparison with Marvel and DC? And who is your favorite character of the Rippaverse? Not just of characters you've written. I'd say Braxwell is my favorite. That's why I named the podcast after him. He's just such a cool character in terms of his design, terms of the way he carries himself. And if I'm going to die on the hill of Braxwell being the best character, bet your ass you will, right?
Yeah, I like Braxwell too, but boy, is he hard to write because he doesn't talk. I wrote Snake Eyes for a long time with G.I. Joe, so I kind of know how to write what you have to do with a character that doesn't talk to keep them interesting, and so that they communicate in a different way to the reader. But as far as favorite characters, um, I really like Brian. Um, and then we have this new villain, Zeno, and I love writing Zeno. People are going to go crazy when they see Zeno.
Yeah, so Zeno is that shapeshifter character on cover B, right?
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, no, because he
that's a
looks
nightmare.
yeah, really cool. I remember watching like Batman the animated series, and Clayface really freaked me out, like when he would like melt and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it reminds me of that. So it's going to be a really cool character to see. But I guess
Yeah,
we want to
this
get
is like Clayface meets the Thing from another world.
yeah, oh yeah, that's it's
Yeah,
going to be interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, getting into like I said, I want to talk about how has your experience been working for the Rippaverse, especially in comparison to the mainstream, because you've got decades of experience in the comic book industry.
Well, I'm always a flexible writer. I mean, I realize I don't own these characters. I don't even want to change these characters. I just want to help develop them and tell good stories with these characters. And for a universe created by an independent creator, Eric, um, he allows an awful lot of leeway. We are given a lot of license to do whatever we want. I have so much agency here to do stuff. And of course, if somehow I break the rules or I do something they don't want in continuity, yeah, I'll rewrite it. That's fine. I just sort of, trial and error. But so far, we haven't run into any conflicts. And in fact, I think Eric is kind of pleased in the way that I've kind of expanded things and added little details into the continuity for the universe, which I dig. I love doing that on Batman, and I'm really loving doing it here. But yeah, I mean the work relationship could not be better. It reminds me of the best days I had working on the Batman titles because those guys were terrific to work with.
Oh yeah, love to hear it, and of course I'm a fan. An experience of being a fan has been really nice. Getting all the books on time, the way ordering a couple of times, had to get customer service to do things. So I love that from the consumer and the creative end. The Rippaverse is really nice to interact with. It's probably why the output is so good. I guess the final question before we tie things up is with the work that you're doing now, do you think that the legacy of the Rippaverse is going to last into like decades, or do you think this is going to peter out eventually?
No, I mean Eric has plans to expand the readership, which I like to see because comic companies traditionally don't reach out for new readers. They just rely on their core fan base. But Eric has real plans to get these characters out more into the general public outside of the comic reading uh, public and the Rippaverse fan base. And the Rippaverse fan base is fantastic. Don't and we could go on for years just relying on them. But I think Rippaverse fans want this to grow, want this to be more accepted, and want to see us expand into the retail space and into all these other places. Because crowdfunding is great, but it can't go on forever. It's not something you want to rely on. And I just and we're creating so much content so fast that we're ready to go out on the big stage
Yeah.
and be seen by a larger public.
Yeah, no, fantastic. So I agree. I definitely want this to be something that anybody can enjoy. Getting this into like local comic book shops, getting this into the retail space, getting the Ripazine out to where magazines traditionally are. Grocery stores, for the post and stuff like that. So there's a
Right.
lot of ways, avenues for the Rippaverse to expand, and I'm definitely all for it. That's why I like doing this podcast. Just giving the community more stuff to consume and be engaged with. But that is all that I have. We touched on everything. Of course, I'd love, NDA, but my closet's back there. Andrew's staked out in case, we said anything that you're not allowed to say. So I don't want to get you in trouble. I don't want to get me in trouble. So if you want to, sign off or say anything that you want to say to the audience, I'd say it now.
No, thank you to all. I mean, like I said, the Rippaverse fan base is amazing. You're fantastic, and we want to always think of you first. Because when I say we want to expand to a larger audience, trust we're not leaving. We're not changing anything. We're not adjusting how we do things. You readers tell us what you want, and we're going to give you more of that. and we're going to give you more, but never in a way you expected. We're always going to try to surprise you.
Yeah, no, fantastic. And I think, you can keep the old readers happy and expand the audience. But thank you for taking the time with me. This has been really fantastic, really insightful. Have someone of your experience and, of course, someone as involved with the creative process of the Rippaverse as you. So this has been really fun, but I don't have anything else. So I'm going to say goodbye now.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everyone who watched.
Okay, so hopefully you guys enjoyed that interview. Again, very appreciative to Chuck for taking the time to interview with me, and hopefully you guys enjoyed that, and hopefully it was as insightful for you as it was for me. But I don't have anything else for this episode. Joker is. Thank you for tuning in to the Braxcast. Be sure to like, comment, follow, and subscribe to keep up with the Rippaverse.